Recently, I've seen many videos of people skim coating walls by applying plaster with a roller and smoothing it out with a taping knife. It looked very easy in those videos, so I decided to try it myself. I chose a small room in my house to experiment with, thinking that if it worked well in a small space, I could use the same technique in my much larger living room with higher ceilings. In this video, I'll show the process and results of my first attempt at skimming and share my key takeaways. First step was to prepare the room for plastering. I removed everything from the walls that could be taken off, such as nails and curtain hangers. Next, I sanded the walls manually with 80 grit sandpaper. Using a sanding machine would have made this much faster, so I highly recommend using one if you have it. After sanding, I dusted off the walls with a brush and wiped them down with a damp sponge. Then I protected the floors with plastic, then taped off everything around the walls with masking tape, including window frames, door frames, and baseboards. Then I moved on to filling in all the small holes and cracks. To prevent porous walls from absorbing too much moisture from the filler, I first primed the holes and cracks with PVA glue diluted in water in 1:3 ratio. I didn't have wall filler on hand, so I just mixed a bit of the same plaster I planned to use for skimming. You can find links to this plaster and all the other tools and supplies I used in the video description. I fixed the crack above the window by filling it, applying mesh tape and adding a thin layer of filler. I completed all these preparations in about 6 hours. Then I let the filler dry completely for a full day before moving on to plastering. I started by priming the walls with diluted PVA glue. After applying it with roller, I waited for about 20-30 minutes until the walls became slightly sticky to the touch. This is the perfect moment to start skimming. While waiting, I mixed the plaster for skimming. Since my plaster came in dry form, I mixed it myself by pouring water into a bucket, gradually adding the plaster and using a mixer to blend it until I reached the right consistency. I didn't measure the exact amount of water in plaster, but if you prefer to save time, I've linked a pre-mixed plaster in the description. To apply the plaster, I used a roller. The roller should have either long fibers or a sponge-like texture. I've linked examples in the description so you can see what I mean. I also recommend using a square-shaped bucket so the roller can fully submerge. Here I'm applying the plaster to the wall. I haven't sped up the footage so you can see the real-time pace of the process. I found it easiest to first apply plaster to the entire wall or large section before smoothing it out. Now that you've seen the real speed of the process, I'll speed up the rest of the footage where I'm applying the plaster. This is how the plastered wall looks at this stage. Now it's time to smooth out the plaster. Again, I haven't adjusted the speed of the video, so you can see the actual pace. The biggest challenge for me was that when I smoothed one area, I would sometimes accidentally mess up a nearby section and have to go over it again. This meant spending a lot of time on each part of the wall, going over it multiple times. What helped me was realizing that the final result doesn't have to be perfect. I learned to stop smoothing a section once the imperfections were minor enough to be sanded down later. Here I'm skimming a corner. Corners are tricky to work on, so I found it helpful to have a smaller putty knife on hand. It makes smoothing the plaster in tight spaces much easier. Now that you've seen the real speed of the process, I'll speed up the rest of the footage where I'm smoothing out the plaster to keep it concise. A little tip: it's easier to sand down imperfections that stick out rather than those that are indented into the surface, like this one on the right. In total, it took two of us about 6 hours to skim coat this small room, which is 5 square meters with approximately 2.4 meter high ceilings. This is how the walls looked 2 days later. From a distance, they seemed fine, but up close I could see some imperfections. The next step was sanding to achieve a smooth finish. I used 180 grit sandpaper. Here you can see how easy it is to sand down raised lines. I only sanded the most visible imperfections. While some defects remained, they were only noticeable when looking closely. Overall, I'm happy with the result, and here are my key takeaways. First, you can definitely skim coat a room yourself, even if you've never done it before. Your first attempt might not be perfect, but you'll improve with practice. Second, skimming looks much easier in videos. In reality, it's very labor intensive, so be prepared for long hours of physical work. Third, if your walls are already relatively straight and smooth, consider skipping skimming altogether. Simply sanding and painting might be enough. And the last one, skimming a room with high ceilings will be much harder. This is how the room looked after a coat of primer and paint. While we are happy with the final result, we ultimately decided to hire professionals for the living room. For the other bedrooms, we'll skip skimming and just sand and paint instead. Thank you for watching, and I hope this video was helpful.